we're the Mario Brothers, and plumbing's a game. We're not like the others who get all the fame. When your sink is in trouble, you could call us on the double. We're faster than the others, you'll be hooked on the brothers.
Thank you, Super Mario Bros. It seems like the only thing you haven't drained is my bank account. For super service, call or text Super Mario Bros. Plumbing today at 929-55-MARIO. Or reach us on the World Wide Web at smbplumbing.com.
G'day folks and welcome to the Vookcast, Australia's Nintendo podcast. My name's Oliver Brandt and with me this week are Angelo Valdivia.
What's up, everyone?
Luke Henderson.
Howdy.
And Michael Goncalves.
Hey team, I forget every single podcast that he's going to do it right up until he does it.
So we've got a great episode lined up for you, all about the February Nintendo Direct. That's about it. We don't really have time for a feature discussion because there's just so much in the Direct. So, as Nintendo does every February, there was a Nintendo Direct. It was about 40 minutes long. It just had so much stuff in it, and most of it was pretty good. So we'll go down through the highlights first, and then I'll go through the full list of everything.
Before we get into it, Ollie, I just want to point out to everyone that Ollie and I watched it live for coverage purposes for, various things that we do. And then Angelo and Michael watched it like 2 hours later, and they were posting in the chat the entire time, like, oh my God. And we're like, oh, it gets better. And then something happened. They're like, oh my God, it gets better. It was just like the most surreal way of discovering the Direct. So
it was a pure coincidence as well that we both tuned in. I think you tuned in earlier than me, Michael, and then there were just
by a couple of minutes, and then somehow we caught up in exactly the same spot. I have no idea.
Oh, it's because I skipped the Splatoon and some of the other junk as well.
Right, that's probably why.
But no, yeah, it genuinely was one of those things where like every time you think it's sort of like hit the peak, it's like, well, here's another thing that's kind of incredible and way better than the last thing.
See, my problem when people start hyping things up like that is that like I'm like, oh, this is the moment, and then it's like, oh no, that's cool for me, but I don't know if everyone else is excited. And then I get to the end and I'm like, oh crap, wait, what were the exciting bits? Because other people get excited about things more than what I do.
Yeah. All right, so let's go through the highlights. These are just the ones that we wrote individual articles about. And then we'll go through some of the other things as well. Because there is a whole bunch of stuff that didn't warrant its own article, but it's still kind of cool. So the big one, this happened at the end of the trailer. The Direct is that there was a new trailer for Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. They're doing an amiibo for it, and they actually did reprints for all of the existing Zelda amiibo. So that's very cool of them, but also just don't do amiibo stuff anymore, please.
Have they sold out yet of any of those?
Listen to my rant every time we talk about it, which is if you're going to put amiibo stuff in, sell the amiibo, and they're doing it. So I can't complain.
I mean, that's true. I mean, it seems like most of them are still available.
That's a surprise. I expected those to sell so quick.
Yeah, they're also not exclusive to the Nintendo store. They're sort of in most retailers as well. So
there are a couple that I might consider getting. Like
the links. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say I might consider getting the Ocarina of Time / Majora's Mask one, just because I love that art style, and they look really, really nice. Personally,
yeah, it looks like the only one that's sold out is the Link's Awakening one, the little toy Link's Awakening, which
the glossy one.
Yeah. But to be fair, that's like the most adorable one, so I totally understand. Anyway, there was a new trailer for it. It looked alright. There's a thing that is you can just play Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, but inside Zelda.
It's a bold strategy considering how vocally against that everyone was about Banjo-Kazooie. So
yeah, but I mean, it looked okay, I guess. I mean, I think like my issue with it, right, as somebody who didn't super love Breath of the Wild, is that it doesn't seem to be doing anything more than Breath of the Wild really did all that much.
I mean, Link has like a weird robot arm now.
Yeah, and I saw people are like, oh wow, it doesn't look like any of Link's Sheikah Slate powers are still around, and I was like, okay, but we saw him like pick things up, and the person responded like, oh, but no, this is using the robot arm and not the Sheikah Slate, so it's a totally different thing. And I was like, that doesn't change anything. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't know. They haven't shown off that you remember in the first trailer they showed off where like you could like,
rewind through liquid into the
stuff and like
also
like go through walls with the like teleporting thing where you could like go through like a platform above you and stuff. They haven't like shown any of that off in these, and those are like the most interesting things that we've seen so far. Because this just looked.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be like a thematic thing as well. Because again, like in all the trailers so far, there's been music and stuff that's been played backwards through. Like even at the very end, there was definitely something. I'm not sure if it was. I haven't looked too far into it. I wasn't sure if it was like spoken dialogue or something. But there's something that's happening in reverse in the audio towards the end. So I think that this is going to be a theme, but it's just not something that they're being overtly forward about at the moment. It'll probably be some twist or something.
So what you're saying, Angelo, is that they did the opposite of a marketing strategy. They did a backwards marketing strategy to tie in with the game.
Yeah, there we go.
Where they show the really interesting stuff first and then the really boring stuff later on.
Yeah, when you play the game, you have a Benjamin Button situation where you turn into like something in utero. Yeah.
Turn into Toon Link throughout the game.
Sure, yeah. That could be it.
But it seems like those nuts and bolt car things is just another thing that's probably going to break in the game. And that's definitely not exciting for me.
Hang on, break as in bad design, or break as in people are going to abuse it and start, spinning across the map at 400 miles an hour?
Break as in like weapons break. And then also break as in mechanically, and then also break because people are going to abuse the crap out of it. All three.
It's just going to be broken across the board.
But in the coming months after the game releases, we're going to have some sick gifts to laugh at, though.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, like, I think even from like Zelda diehards, like people aren't super sold on it right now. Like,
100%.
The first trailer that we saw, like people were just like losing their minds. But like this one, I mean, maybe it was just because of all of the other announcements, which are very exciting. And like one of them, I just didn't even put a thing in here, but we'll talk about that in a bit anyway.
I think
it's been a lukewarm reaction.
I think it's because we've just seen the game for so long now. Like, we're years past ready for this game to come out. It's been 6 years since Breath of the Wild originally came out, and we heard about this game 3 years ago. They showed us they announced it via that trailer.
Well, 3.5 years ago, E3 2019.
Yeah, that trailer where they're like underground or something like that, and that's what we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be like a whole new sort of Hyrule or something underground, and then they released another trailer where it turns out we're going to visit all these new places above ground. So I think we're just at a point now, which is like, okay, we're just people just want to get the game. Like, I'm super excited for this game. I'm a pretty big Zelda fan, but I'm also the kind of person now who's old and crotchety where I just try not to get super hyped up about games, because a lot of the time I'm just always disappointed about how they turn out, or something. There's some sort of discourse around it that spins me out and doesn't want me to sort of engage with it, at least initially. So yeah, just waiting for the game patiently to come out, I think, is probably more what a lot of people are
this
doing
just before the podcast. But I was saying that, like, I've got quite a few friends who are really big fans of Breath of the Wild, and before it was named Tears of the Kingdom, they were very excited about Breath of the Wild 2, like, when's it coming, blah blah blah. And now they've seen obviously both these trailers, they've said, oh, it just looks like more of the same. And I was saying, like, I just don't understand what Breath of the Wild fans want. Like, it sounded like, at least the Discord that I was hearing from my friends and the general community and whatnot, that people wanted more Breath of the Wild. And it looks like that's what they're getting, and a lot of people don't seem to be into that. I'm just really confused about what people want. It's
funny, right? Because like with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask is pretty much just more of the same, apart from the 3-day time loop mechanic and the fact that the masks play a much heavier role in the game. Like, fundamentally, like, the game plays exactly the same, has very, very similar art style, level design. Yeah, apart from a couple of handful of levels, aren't too different to what's going on in Ocarina of Time, but it's still like as great of a game as that one is, and people still remember it fondly. So, like, this was always going to be. There was no mistake about this being a sequel to Breath of the Wild. So why would anyone expect it to not be very much similar to that game? Like, it's kind of the point. And it's been 6 years between games, but I guess like Breath of the Wild is just so big and so popular that a lot of people never really put that game down and still return to it, or spend hundreds of hours in that game. So I don't know. We've had so many other Zelda games in that time come out. So
yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, the fact that it is looking so similar, like, obviously it should be exciting for Breath of the Wild fans because it's like basically, that 200 hours you play, here's another 200 hours of stuff that you haven't done yet. And like that's cool for them. But like for me, because I didn't really like the first game, that it being so similar is just like what is very off-putting about it to me.
But like, if you didn't like the first game and then there's a direct sequel of the same game, like, yeah, it makes sense that you're probably not going to be as excited about it, though, right?
Well, yeah, but like there have been games where I haven't really enjoyed the first game, but then like super loved the second. Like I'm always like willing to try. So like I don't love the first Kingdom Hearts game. I don't think it's really that great, but like Kingdom Hearts 2 is like top tier, one of my favorite games of all time. So like I'm more than willing to like give a second go in a series a game, a go. But
I think the difference there though is that like with something like Kingdom Hearts or a lot of other games in series, like the games tend to get markedly quite better because they improve on systems from previous games and stuff. Whereas something like Breath of the Wild, at least like, in terms of receivership of how it was widely received by people, like you already sort of hit that very high mark as it is. So we'll see what kind of improvements come from it over time. But I think that's kind of what it is as well. That's what we're getting, the whole more of the same thing rather than like a huge overhaul or a huge improvement, whatever that might be in a game like this.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, like, just from what we've seen from the trailers, like, it's pretty obvious that, like, there's probably still going to be some sort of weapon degradation because they've kind of hinted heavily at that, and that was, like, a sore point for me. Despite the fact that, like, everybody keeps saying, like, oh, you just don't understand the game design. It's like, no, I understand the game design, I just don't like it. And the other thing is that, like, it does kind of seem like Zelda herself is going to be, like, sidelined again. And I'm just like so tired of that being a thing. Just like let us play as Zelda.
Well, that's the point though. It's called Legend of Zelda. She's not actually in the game, Ollie.
when that line in the trailer was there that lend him your power or whatever it was, my first thought was, if she's separated from Link, in this cave in when they're underground and all that, what if there's times where you get to play as her? Or maybe they do, a separate story expansion after the game comes out where it's her explorations underground, trying to find this mysterious power for Link, like
Paper Mario. You get to play as Peach, in between chapters.
Yeah, something like that. Obviously, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom wouldn't have chapters so much, but there's something they could do with that, especially if if she's helping Link out by going to somebody else for support. That could be something. So,
but it could also be a monkey paw situation where it turns out to be like Spider-Man on the PS4, where sure we get to play as Zelda, but it's just a stealth mission or something like that.
God,
she's just
the Mary Jane sections were so god awful.
Exactly right. Like it could be something like that. If that's the kind of thing that I'd be worried about.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more likely that like they're just gonna not let Zelda be playable than they are gonna like do that kind of thing. Like there's 30 whatever years of Zelda, and she's been playable in like a couple spin-off games.
What if it's Tingle? What if she goes to Tingle for help, and now Tingle is making his appearance?
Don't give me hope.
I mean,
I think whatever like bad guy this game has can deal with Link having Tingle's power. It's way too much.
I don't know if he's in that leotard again and that giant skin tight onesie, that might do him in.
Anyway, yeah, it looks like more Breath of the Wild, and for people who are fans of Breath of the Wild, like, congrats.
I'm
like me, I'll
at least.
I mean, like, I'll probably buy it and still give it a go. Also, it's more expensive in the US than every other Switch game, and it's not here, so
which makes me laugh.
That's most games, right? Like looking at a lot of games that are like $70 here or $80 here, they are cheaper than buying them in the US in general. So I don't know what people are getting sort of up in arms about.
Well, I mean, like Vook even like did an article about how like in Australia, like games are cheaper than they have been in a really long time, and like cheaper than most other regions as well.
It's even cheaper more so when you see, EB Games always does recommended retail price for their releases. So for games $99.95 as the recommended retail, that's what they do it as. But then, JB will do $10 off and Amazon will do $20 off. Well, Big W might throw $15 off, for that first sort of week.
Who's going out and paying full retail for games? Like who's doing that in this day and age when so many people have been complaining about game prices and things over the last 15 years or so? Like if you're doing that, then you deserve to pay $130 for a brand new game.
Especially when
yeah.
most of the time, any Ubisoft game, usually 4 months later, it's on sale for like,
I
30 or
genuinely
40% off.
I would never ever buy an Ubisoft game at launch. Same as like Square Enix games, right? I know that like in 6 months' time, it's going to be like $15 on the digital store. Like it's just not worth.
It also
spending
won't be
the money.
broken and it'll be patched to work somewhat correctly.
Yeah. Anyway, we've spent 15 minutes talking about Zelda, so we should move on to the next topic. Otherwise, we're going to be here literally all day. So another kind of big one that we all kind of knew was going to happen, and now it's finally here. Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games are on the Switch now. So on Nintendo Switch Online, you can get Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. And then if you're a Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack subscriber, you can get Game Boy Advance games. So I've just got the list here. On the Game Boy, you've got Tetris, Super Mario Land 2, Link's Awakening DX, Gargoyle's Quest, Game & Watch Gallery 3, Alone in the Dark, Metroid 2, Wario Land 3, and Kirby's Dream Land. And then on GBA, you've got Super Mario Bros. 3, WarioWare, Kururin, Mario Kart Super Circuit, Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, and The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. So yeah, really, really solid selection of launch games. And they showed that like Golden Sun is going to be coming to GBA, which is really the only other one that I want. So, yeah, already worth it for me. But
I chuckle at it though. They were going, here's the Mario game that everyone loves. Here's Tetris that everyone loves on Game Boy. And here's Gargoyle's Quest. It's like, oh, that's a bit of a weird one. Cool, why not? And then here's Game & Watch Gallery. It's like, what the hell is this shit? And they're like, here's Alone in the Dark. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, normally we get, one really random title and then a bunch of, familiar, if maybe not top tier titles. But, they just went out completely out of left field with Alone in the Dark. It sort of threw me for a loop.
So, Alone in the Dark is a real weird choice. But I guess they wanted a mature title of some sort, maybe. But
it's also like surprisingly good. I've been playing it, and it just like it's a lot better than I thought it would be. Like I genuinely didn't think that like the Game Boy was like capable of rendering shit in the way that Alone in the Dark renders stuff. Like it's just a really impressive title technically.
But gentlemen, none of these games are Donkey Kong 94. I just need to once again beat that drum. That Nintendo also, completely missed the mark here.
And none of these games are Pokemon.
They
that was Pokemon trading card games coming.
That's true, and I'm actually really keen for that. That's actually a really good game. That's a really really fun game. It'd be great if we also got like Pokemon Pinball as well. That was another really good
so that's what
GBA game.
So there's a Pokemon Pinball on Game Boy and on Game Boy Advance as well. There's a sequel to it. Both of those are really lovely games.
So
yeah,
that's really cool.
And
the only thing that I think is cool is
I was going to say. Sorry.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. I can't remember.
Excellent.
The e-reader content. The e-reader levels
for Super Mario.
Yeah. Which is kind of a weird and fun thing that they're putting in there. Not because it's like great that they're completing the game. It's like, well, because there were so many of those e-reader cards that have basically become unreadable because of time. Now, who knows what they'll include going forward.
Well, if you look after your cards, they should be pretty readable because they don't have the magnetic strips on them. They're just like little dots.
Codes,
Yeah. No, I know that, but I'm saying, it's been, 20 plus years since
children chewed on them. Yeah, I know what you mean. Gosh, kids are the worst.
But the Wii U release of that game had the levels anyway, so it's good. But they also so there's a whole bunch of things that are coming. They said so. There's the Oracle of Ages and Seasons, which is very exciting. It's a Pokemon trading card game, Kirby Tilt and Tumble, Golden Sun, Metroid Fusion, which like it feels like they probably should have gotten Metroid Fusion in there like before Dread came out, but who am I to complain? Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, Fire Emblem, and F-Zero Maximum Velocity.
I just realized we got 3 Metroid games on one day. Metroid 2 Return of Samus on Game Boy, Metroid Fusion on Game Boy Advance, and
Getting
the
ahead
GameCube
of
ad.
getting
Yeah.
ahead of it.
Spoilers. God.
Exactly.
It's worth noting that we now have like 2 F-Zero games on the Switch now. So
People can
Not the
people can
one
shut
that I
up.
want.
That's 2 more than what Nintendo's made in about 20 years.
yeah, but yeah.
I also just want to say that like the Game Boy games, like some of them are actually pretty good. I mean, Tetris and everything like that. And what's cool as well is that you can play these online or
Yep.
via local co-op too. So playing 2-player Tetris is a thing now. Don't have to hook up with a big dumb cable anymore. But yeah, some of these choices for Game Boy Advances Game Boy Advance are pretty solid. You got Super Mario, you got Mario Kart, you got Minish Cap, which is one of the best Zeldas in my opinion, and WarioWare as well. So a really strong step forward. I just feel like that there probably could have been a couple more that they could have thrown in to here. Like they're not really hurting to be able to throw some more games out on the service.
Yeah.
No, like the fact that like there's 4 like GBA ports of like the Super Nintendo like Mario games, right? And they're just like they put 1 on there. There's like all of the Donkey Kong countries available, Donkey Kong Land games, the Donkey Kong Country GBC games. All of those are like different and interesting, and like they own the rights to all of them. They can slap them up there whenever they want.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
And I feel like these the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance ones should have come out way sooner on NSO. And this is kind of the problem that I have with NSO is that like we're just constantly being fed this really slow drip feed of a lot of these games. And then obviously when they make an announcement like this, it's exciting and stuff. But then the dust sort of settles, and then I'm kind of sitting here thinking like, why don't we get these ages ago? It would make the service, at least like something like the expansion pack, make way more sense to get in on from day one. Like to launch a service and have like a small handful of games come out for it, and then to just sit here for like 3 or 4 years and then be like, oh yes, now finally something else has come out and justifies my 3 or 4 years of subscribing to this service. You know, they should really have done something like this right from the get-go, and then they can switch between, you know, releasing a game for the Game Boy Advance and then one for the N64 or something like that.
Well,
you know?
see, that's the thing.
Really
Like, I'm pretty
themselves,
sure that's going to be like the cadence going forward. Is that like we're going to get alternating platforms? So, you know, maybe 1 month we'll get like a Nintendo 64 game, or the next month we'll get a bunch of Sega Mega Drive games, or the month after that we'll get Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games, and like they have like these things that they can sort of cycle through now. So like when they moved from like having monthly Super Nintendo and Nintendo games to just like whenever we feel like it, you know, that was kind of annoying. But now that they've got like these different platforms to like build on, there really shouldn't be a month where retro games aren't releasing.
Yeah, sure. And like while people do have some things to say, you know, negative things or whatever about PlayStation Plus Premium and all those kinds of things, at least there is a schedule for those games. Like we know that at the beginning of every month we're going to get a couple of PlayStation games, quote unquote, for free as part of PlayStation Plus, and then halfway through the month there's going to be a new wave of PS Plus deluxe games that come out. They do alternate like that every fortnight. So every fortnight there is going to be some games that come out that we'll have access to. Whether or not they're good games is irrelevant. Like at least we know that there is something there that's coming out for what we're paying. Same with Xbox. Like we know that there's going to be games coming out every couple of weeks, and months ahead of time they say, you know, within the next couple of months we're going to be releasing these big tentpole games and stuff. Whereas when it comes to this, like we just don't know anything. Like all we can do is assume. We can assume that there's going to be another set of releases in a month, but we don't know what they're going to be, and we don't know when it's going to happen. It's just,
I mean, like
kind of
in this regard, like it's funny because like this is the actual 1 month where we do know what we're going to get.
Eventually, yes, for this lot that came out, yes, and eventually we will get Oracle of Seasons and stuff like that, but we don't know when that's going to happen. Like Golden Sun was in that banner, but it could come anytime between now and December. Like
we know that like at the end of February we're getting another drop as well, but that's because it's Pokemon Day, so we'll get the Pokemon Stadiums on the 64. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like we've had our monthly cadence except like 1 month basically since N64 happened. So I think we'll probably continue to get that.
My issue now though is that they've got 6 platforms on their service, and I suspect they're not going to increase the schedule of content drops. So I think they're just going to keep the release schedule they've had because it's like it works for them, so they're happy with it.
I mean, the release schedule that they've got is like one N64 game a month plus whenever other things are ready.
Yeah. So the only question I would ask though is if everyone recalls when the GBA leak happened, when they said, oh, this emulator existed on the Switch and rah, rah, rah. There are a whole bunch of games in there. I want to know how many of those games have been like announced or released so far, because that might give us an indication of their forward plans.
I probably wouldn't say that they would, just because I think it's just testing. They're testing a wide variety of things. So something that we don't really talk about data mines and stuff so too much on this, but data miners have looked at the emulator. It is an incredibly accurate and high quality emulator that they're using here. It is one of the very few.
It is pretty good. Let's not go crazy.
It's one of 4 emulators that can pass the hardware check cartridge that Nintendo made for the console.
Sure, but I wouldn't I don't know. Maybe I have different expectation of what excellent and very good is. It's a decent emulator.
It's pretty much hardware accurate, not 100% flawless, but it's more accurate than the Analog Pocket. So,
well, again, to continue to be the naysayer on this topic, because that's what I do. It's great that it has a great emulator, but there has to be good games to play on it. That's the only thing, and we've only been shown a hint of what will come eventually, but there's more than just 9 games on the Game Boy Advance, for example. There are hundreds of really, really good games, and hopefully we'll only get bangers, is what I'm saying. Don't give us no bottom of the barrel crap decide to fight out in October.
It's kind of difficult because the licensing for these things is extraordinarily complex, especially from this era of handheld titles.
THQ
licensing. Yeah, THQ published half of the stuff that exists on the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, and they are just split up. Their assets belong to 17 different companies now. So there's a lot of stuff that just isn't able to make it over, and that's fine. But Nintendo's got its own library of stuff that is really good, and it's kind of weird that not all of that is there now.
I will say that Nintendo, if Nintendo are listening, they can make Angelo a convert if they just put Donkey Kong 94 on there.
Yeah, do that. But licensing is always an issue. But Nintendo is one of the wealthiest, it's one of the wealthiest game companies in the world. So I can't.
It's not even in the top 10, but yeah.
But what I'm saying is
I
can't give them any sort of sympathy for something like this for a service that they created. It's a problem of their own making for a lot of these issues. They're completely in control of what to do about this, and they're also the most stringent about any sort of copyright laws or anything like that themselves. So I'm not really going to forgive them for a problem like this.
Okay, but on the other hand, Angelo, you say that we know that we get these games on PlayStation and we know that we get them on Xbox, but games also disappear from those services and they won't disappear from Nintendo's service. Sure. And that's why these things take so long sometimes, is because trying to work out a licensing deal where this game is going to appear on this console for the rest of time is a lot to deal with.
But again, no one asked them to do that. That is a problem with Nintendo's own making.
I mean, they've said that the games, it hasn't happened, and the fact that we've been rolling with third-party NES and Super Nintendo games for 5 years means that it's not going to happen.
But that's a problem with Nintendo's own making. They created the platform, they've set their own rules and everything like that. And the thing about PlayStation and Xbox is, again, they were upfront about rotating games in and out. From the get-go, basically, Xbox has said that its Game Pass is going to be like Netflix for games. So we know right from the get-go what that means in terms of how to play it, and then there are going to be things that are going to come in and out of the service.
PlayStation was not so straightforward about it.
Yeah, PlayStation did not say that.
They did not say anything about it until 2 days before a bunch of games were leaving, and they're oh, by the way, these are leaving, and that's how it's going to be going forward.
Yeah. But again,
Netflix is not the service you want to be compared to right now.
Well, I'm just saying that's how it's always explained, right? Game Pass is the Netflix for games. But PlayStation, both Xbox and PlayStation have hundreds of games to choose from, whereas these systems are all old games. They're all old games, and there's probably about maybe 110 or something like that to choose from. A lot of which people probably already have copies of, or have already emulated recently, because it's just taken years and years and years for these games to come out. So
yeah, I honestly think there should be more games in the service as it stands. And I know things like Capcom, they've got their Mega Man collections, so they've already put their NES games in these things. Like that's great and all, but it doesn't cost Capcom any money to do this, to put Mega Man in the NES app. And it just gives them goodwill to say, hey, we worked with Nintendo, the NES Mega Man's are there, enjoy. My issue is, again, it just comes back to the quality, is that we know Nintendo have a bunch of games that will eventually come and they'll be good games and we'll enjoy them. But for every good game we get, we tend to get 2 or 3 duds. And considering how long it takes them to release a wave of titles, we're essentially getting 1 good game a month, and then we get 2 months worth of dud games, and then we get again, we're back onto the start of the cycle again. And that's my only concern with all this, is that we don't get the content consistently enough to justify the level of quality the games are delivering. And again, I've said it before, some players may love some of these games. Like there are some games that hit the NES app and I'm like, okay, cool. Twin Bee, I'm sure somebody loves that game. Not me, but they tend to focus more on the one really, really good game every now and again. And I don't think that's what it needs to be. I think it needs to be focused more on the quality of the original games. And Nintendo can definitely do something about that.
Yeah, I mean, like, can they though on like the NES, right? Because like they've already tapped out pretty much all of the NES's good games, right? Like, where do you go from there? I mean, there just aren't any good NES games anymore.
There was that thing called the Nintendo Seal of Quality. If a game has that, it has to be good.
At least for like the newer systems, like Nintendo can 100% control when their own first-party titles come out and how many they have. And I feel like just holding back first-party titles is just why. Just put them on there. Like
I'm not saying we need every single Nintendo game today on all the platforms, but they need to be showing the schedule. They need to be saying, hey, we're going to drop the rest of these Mario ports, by April. They need to start doing that rather than just hoping people are going to stick with them.
Like I said, like it's great that they've released these systems and stuff like that. But again, you look at it like I'm looking at it as pure as quantity this time, not even quality necessarily. Like there's 9 Game Boy games, and then 6 Game Boy Advance games. Like, and again, we know that there are hundreds of games that could be potentially on this service. 100 of them alone would just be Nintendo's, and they're not going to get through that by the time they decide to sunset this service eventually, because that's going to happen, right? Eventually, they're going to sunset this and start again with a new console or something like that, or at the end of the next generation or something. They'll do something new. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we've given this enough airtime.
I will give props though to Nerd, which are the folks that do these emulators. So Nintendo European Research and Development. They've been fantastic with these. Like some of the settings, like obviously if you put it to, what do they call it, like original screen size or something, the Game Boy Advance games become like the size of 2 postage stamps on your Switch screen. They're not playable in that. Like I don't know why that particular function exists. But the pixelized mode for the GBA stuff, it looks really, really good. So
what's interesting about that as well, like the original feel setting on both the GBA and the Game Boy and Game Boy Color one, it actually adds like artificial ghosting so that like the screen, like it looks and feels like the screen on the original consoles would, which is just kind of wild, right? Like nobody does that. But they really just put a lot of work into making sure.
I can't get rid of a background.
No, apparently not.
Let us turn those things off on the side, please. For all that is holy, that stuff needs to go.
Yeah, and I will point out as well that like I just added them all up. There are 241 games on the Nintendo Switch Online service, which is a lot more than you'd think. But like 100 of those are NES games. I really don't think there's going to be any more NES games because like there's no more good ones. We ran out of good ones a long time ago. They've just been giving us shit ones.
They need to tap into that library of ones where you had to plug in an original NES card into the dodgy cart so it would boot. You need those Frankenstein cards. I'm kidding. Don't do that, please.
Let's quickly get through some of these. I mean, we've been talking for such a long time, and we are 2 topics into a 15-topic show.
I mean, if it's gonna happen for any Vookcast, it's gonna be the one with a really good direct. I'm down with that.
Yeah. So this one, there's not really too much to talk about. It's just Advance Wars.
Excuse me, I think there is.
We've talked about it in depth in the past. Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp has a release date, April 21st, which is great. So look forward to the next war breaking out on April 20.
I mean, I think you're missing the other important news based on this article that I correctly predicted that it happened.
Well, I mean, you did correctly
Obviously.
predict that it would happen. So yeah, kudos to that. We will revisit that.
I'll take my wins as I get them.
But yeah, so that's finally coming out after like being in limbo for a year. Pikmin 4.
I did chuckle though at the number of people that were like freaking out. Oh my god, they're going to shadow drop Advance Wars because some guy who said he works for Walmart said they saw displays for it. It's like every time this stuff happens, it's like just calm down, people. Just pump the brakes, please. Just makes me laugh that they build up so much hype and then nothing happens.
Alrighty. Pikmin 4 is actually launching a lot earlier than people thought. Launching on July 21st. You get a dog, you can put your Pikmin on top of the dog and then swim across rivers.
I think you mean Space Dog. Thank you.
A space dog, yeah.
Named Ochi.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really cute. And you can actually play as the dog as well. Like, it's not just like you can control it like you would a Pikmin. Like, you can just take control of the dog. He's a dude you can control. So...
You mean he's a pooch you can control?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, it looks really good. I think the new camera is going to take a lot to get used to, like the lower down camera that is like more behind the shoulder kind of thing. But it looks like a lot of fun.
I'd love to see them include a regular, like a traditional Pikmin style, just for the people that prefer that. I don't think they would. I think they're pretty set in their ways on what they're going to offer, but it'd be nice for them to include that.
There's probably going to be a lot of game design elements that aren't going to work from that higher camera. So
yeah,
we'll see how it goes. Are we excited for Pikmin 4? Just before we move on.
I don't like Pikmin at all, so I'm not that worried about it.
I'm keen on it. I never finished 3, and I got it on the Wii U, but I played the hell out of it for like a whole weekend, and then I never finished it and went back. But I've always wanted to.
Yeah. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. They gave us a teaser for the next wave, and Birdo is in it. They're adding characters to course passes.
Totally unexpected and awesome.
Yeah. So they're adding Birdo in the next one. We don't know when it's coming yet, but Birdo's there, and that's the one thing I've been asking for from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe since it launched on the Wii U. So,
read somewhere that they've also confirmed more characters coming in the next passes.
Yep.
Cool.
They said in the PR that there would be more characters added in the future. So, yeah, really, really exciting stuff. Get rid of that. Not relevant. Ghost Trick. Remember Ghost Trick, everybody?
Yeah,
Sure do.
Best games. Yeah, that's coming to the Switch. Hell yeah. Also, everything else. It's based on the mobile port, which was pretty solid.
The only thing that I'm disappointed about with this re-release is that this one looks way better than any other release of of Ghost Trick, including the iPad version from 2012, which is the one that I played, and I only just finished it a few years ago. It looks basically just like the DS version, whereas I saw this announcement, I'm like, where was this incredible and clean art style 10 to 11 years ago? So I'm a little bit envious.
Does look super gorgeous. I mean, you can buy it and play it again, Angelo. It's going to be on everything.
I just finished it a few years ago. I didn't need to play it again. It took me 9 years to play it, to finish it. So. But it's a great game.
It won't be released physically, so it's only a digital title.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. It's such a good game. It's so funny as well.
Also recommend.
The little Pomeranian dog that's with you, he's the best. He's so good.
Mm-hmm. What's it?
I'll be honest, I've never played it.
Such a good name as well.
It's Missile.
Yeah, Missile. That's what I said.
Oh, I thought I said Missile, sorry.
No, Missile.
I thought he said Pixel.
No, he's the best.
Someone go back in the audio and let us know.
All right, now another big one, and this is kind of surprising for everyone because everybody thought Level 5 was dead, at least in the West. Level 5 had 3 games in the Nintendo Direct. They had a new, a thing called Deca Police, which looks like a police investigative game. They had a new Fantasy Life game, which who thought that was going to happen? I don't know. But the big one is that they're bringing Professor Layton back. So there hasn't been a new Professor Layton game since 2013, if we don't count the, Lady Layton and Layton brothers on all of the other things, and also like Ace Attorney versus Professor Layton.
There hasn't been a dedicated branded Professor Layton game.
Dedicated branded Professor Layton game since 2013. So yeah, really, really good.
See, this is one of those moments where you guys were all like, "Oh man, this is it! One of the big moments coming up." And then the 5-second trailer happened. I'm like, "Oh, is this one of the moments those guys were just losing their shit over?"
I mean, yeah, it's a huge series.
Is it?
Yeah, no information.
It
was 10 seconds long. You just saw Professor Layton turn around, and I am so goddamn hyped for this game. You have no idea.
I don't know. Like, I always thought it was fine, but like they're just puzzle games.
I just enjoy puzzles.
Engaging.
Like, I'm down with puzzles.
I'm fine with puzzle games and stuff as a genre, but like playing this game, I'm just kind of like, oh, these are just a lot of like just logic puzzles and stuff that you'd find in a lot of just logic puzzle apps and things in general. I'm not trying to take anything away from this. I actually respect that you guys like this one quite a lot. I'm just kind of surprised that,
as opposed to other things we like.
Actually, yes, but like, I'm just surprised that this one is getting a lot of airtime with so many people. Like yeah, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, but like,
I'm with you, Angelo. I'm happy that it's coming back, but this is not worth getting hyped over because it's like, great, this is the Metroid Prime 4 logo.
Yeah, there's that too. Again. Like it was just a 10-second anime.
It's great. It's great that we've seen something of it, but it's like that doesn't necessarily mean that's how the game's going to look.
Like
I figure it will be.
If it completely flipped genres and became something like a Leisure Suit Larry, then maybe I'd be interested. But like,
wow.
Leisure Suit Layton. I'm hyped for it only because I'd loved the games on the DS and the 3DS. I thought they were fantastic. But I hope that the gameplay's evolved significantly because I do not want to tap around on my Switch screen for 4 minutes trying to find a hint coin.
I forgot about that.
I think hint coins will probably not be something like that. This is like they showed a 3D rendered Layton on the screen. Like they showed a 3D environment going on. Like it's going to be like a proper 3D game. It's not just going to be like a visual novel like all the previous ones were.
I think it's going to be more like LA Noire, but Layton Noire. The other thing too,
it's going to be a platform RPG, guys. Get ready for it.
So Layton gets involved in like a sex scandal, and you've got to interrogate. Oh jeez.
I mean, he does canonically have a daughter, so like we know that like Professor Layton has sex.
When this game came out, they said put in the character's name for the assistant, and I put my name in. I put Luke in, and then that said my name. I was like, oh my god, this game's great. It's got like, recorded names. He says your name. Didn't realize till like 3 games later the assistant was actually named Luke. So that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I will say this: so Professor Layton is a Switch exclusive, at least for now. Fantasy Life I is a Switch exclusive. That's another one in that series. Decapolice is Switch and PlayStation.
Yeah.
And Decapolice is very interesting because it's a real world crime solver, but to solve the crimes you've got to go into a digital recreation of the city, and that's where you do like the RPG battling and all that sort of stuff.
And you turn into a cat. So, 10 out of 10 game of the year. No, I mean, like, level 5 has, like, a history of, like, very much overpromising and under-delivering. So, like, all of these could be, like, terrible or may not turn up at all. Like, there's an Inazuma 11 game that, like, was supposed to come out in 2016, and they keep saying, oh, it's coming out next year.
They said the day after the Direct that more news was coming soon for that game.
It's going to be delayed again. It's been, like, definitely coming out this year for 7 years now, so, it just may not happen, but, anyway. Professor Layton, series sold 20 million, probably going to spend 20 million just on this new game. It probably will not, but yeah. The big one is that there's a Metroid Prime remaster, and it's gorgeous, and it's out already. They just like dropped it during the presentation. Like, how? Why?
It was not just a easy done remaster though, or re-release. Like this is like it is a remaster, but like they've actually gone back and like redone some of the assets and lifted the
all of the assets. I don't think anything in that game is original, bar like the code that's running underneath it.
Like it looks actually really nice, and not even just really nice for a Switch game, just in general. Like it looks really nice for a re-release of
gorgeous
of a GameCube game. It's incredible.
Yeah. It is just absolutely gorgeous. I've only played about like half an hour of it so far, but I just like it's an amazingly looking game. I've seen like people on Twitter being like, "Oh, this is like one of those remasters where like the design goal was to like make it look how you remember it looking.
Mm.
And I can like definitely see that kind of influence in there. But like I looked up like comparisons between it, and like it's night and day. Like you would not believe that it's the same game.
Well, that's the thing. So
yeah.
I finished it yesterday, and the entire time I was playing it, I was like, I remember seeing this, because I played it recently as well for a stream series, but I just playing it, I'm like, yeah, this looks exactly how I remember it. And then I looked at the comparisons, I went, no, it looks 1,000 times better than what it used to. But that was sort of the big thing for me, is that this is a remaster where it's triggered that part in my brain where my brain goes, no, this looks identical, because when I first played it, that's how I remember it. I envisioned it being that sort of game. Like when you walk into the Magmore caverns and you go too close to the lava, the heat wave distortion that pops up on the screen and all that, like that stuff blew me away on the GameCube, and it looks even better now. So I give them credit for being one of the best remasters around, because they've not just made it look pretty, because the art style for the original release was so stunning back then, but it sort of gives me that whole a justification that everything that I played back then still holds up today, because it still does.
Yeah, and this was my first time properly playing it, because I bounced off it so many times in the past because of it's a god awful control system. I don't like the control scheme of the original. I didn't really like the Wii version all that much better. But now I've got like proper twin stick controls, and it like is absolutely gorgeous to play.
Though if you're not like Ollie and you do like the original GameCube control scheme, it does actually support the GameCube controller.
Yeah, if
I'd
you're a
imagine it doesn't
total
have
weirdo, you can do that.
I'd imagine it doesn't have a similar motion control screen to.
It does. It's got
Oh,
4.
it does.
Yep.
And how does it play?
It plays like Splatoon. It's kind of a mix between the Splatoon motion control and the GameCube style. So when you have to hold down
Completely
the
gilded point.
Yeah.
Oh.
As soon as you said Splatoon, I'm just like, oh.
As you move around, there's no gyro, but when you stop and you press and hold the trigger button, that's when the gyro kicks in.
Oh,
Luke,
okay.
you can make it just like Splatoon, but all the time.
Yeah, but nobody likes Splatoon that way.
I know, but what I'm saying is like you can have the gyro on all the time with twin stick controls. Like you don't have to do it where you press the button.
I thought he was going to say nobody likes Splatoon all the time.
No, so it does work. So it offers up standard like first-person shooter controls, the sort of Wiimote control scheme. So from the trilogy, the Splatoon-ish style, and then the original GameCube style. So
awesome.
The only thing I don't like about it is the like doing the super missile. You have to charge up the shot, and if you're doing twin stick, you can use the A button to fire or the right trigger on like the Pro controller. If you're doing the right trigger, you then have to press the right shoulder button to fire the super missile. And it's like, that's not really so, I had to always try and remember to use the A button to charge up and then do it. And then swapping out weapons, you press and hold X and then the D-pad. So just doing the D-pad does the visors. Pressing X enables the gun swap. And I just kept forgetting, but I have the 8-bit controller. So I remapped one of the rear buttons to be X. So I was just like tapping that on the back of the controller and I was good to go. It takes a bit of getting used to, especially, again, because I played it so recently on the Wii. But yeah, once you get into it, it just plays beautifully.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to getting that eventually. Probably not going to get it digitally. I'll wait till it gets a physical release. When's that? In a few weeks?
March 3rd.
March 3rd. Awesome.
Yep. And that's like kind of like the downside to like, shadow dropping a retail release is like you just can't have the retail copies like sitting there waiting to release the game. So
let's face it, staff at these places that sell video games, they're not known for keeping secrets.
No,
even
as
if
we've
they
seen
had
over
it
the last 20
just
years.
in production and sitting in warehouses, it still would have got leaked. It isn't just these games like stores. It would have got leaked regardless.
The really funny thing about all this is the game was rated like 18 months ago. It was rated back in 2021 and nobody noticed.
Well, it was under a suppression order because that's how it works with games that haven't been released or announced yet. So yeah, it was as far as we know finished at the end of 2021. And
I pointed this out in chat the other day for these guys, but I'll say it here. This is the second console developer within a month to shadow drop a fully unreleased, unannounced title.
Yeah.
because Xbox did it with Hi-Fi Rush, and now Nintendo have done it with Metroid Prime Remastered. So PlayStation, March is your month. You could really blow us away.
Well, so now all Nintendo needs to do is just quickly rush a remaster of Echoes, because no one really cares about that one. But then get straight into 3 to get the good one out there.
Honestly,
a lot of people that like Echoes, like a ton.
I know. I'm just being a bit.
If they did like a Prime 2 remaster in like late April, early May, they could do a Prime 3 remaster in say August, early September, and then theoretically Metroid Prime 4 could release in like October, November.
No, man, we're waiting 15 years apiece for all of these.
I'm not expecting Metroid 4 to release this year, but I am expecting them to do the remasters of the other 2 this year. I think that's pretty solid.
I wouldn't be surprised if they
re-released them. I don't think it's
them.
going to happen though.
I wouldn't be surprised if they re-released them rather than remaster them, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know.
Doing the Gears of War thing, remastering the first game and then ignoring the rest.
I mean that's generally what a lot of developers tend to do, right? They remaster the first game and then just release the the rest of the series, afterwards, just as they are.
Yeah, but like part of the problem is that like they've got these like high quality assets already, right? They may as well just like slap them into it because like it's going to be the same engine largely.
Sure, but I'm just being like, the Halo series did the same thing. They only remastered 1 and 2 and then just re-released ODST and 3, etc. Afterwards, like, yeah, so long as the games are just out and new people can play them and they're not time locked to a console that came out 20 years ago, it's be so much better for everyone, I think.
They could just put GameCube emulation on Nintendo Switch Online and just dump them in that way. That'll make people happy.
That's not. It's just not going to happen.
That's going to happen. Could you imagine
that would give them a reason to bring back the Wavebird controller?
Yeah, but that app would be so big.
I know.
We're talking
it would be
and gigabytes.
And so also, like, if you think like the current release cadence is slow, like they had to like half emulate a lot of stuff for the Wii and the GameCube things in our 3D All Stars, so they would have to do like custom versions for every single game that they put on that.
True,
and it would just suck.
Yeah, Nerd have the skills to do this stuff, but they don't have a massive workforce. So,
yeah. Anyway, yeah, there's a whole bunch of more stuff. If there's just too much to go through, I would be here for literally hours. But
I just want to call out we finally got a new Samba de Amigo game, and every time I wrote that game title down on the day, I kept calling it Samba de Amiibo, and I kept shuddering every time I wrote that. But people go, oh yeah, we got one on the Wii. It's like, no, that was a port of the Dreamcast game, and that was done by Gearbox Software. So the folks that made Borderlands ported Samba de Amigo to Wii.
To be fair, Amiibo could be anything though, Luke. They could release a couple of maracas that have Amiibo NFC chips in them, and you just, yeah.
I mean, they could. But also, like, I didn't know that Samba de Amigo was a thing until, like, the Direct, so...
It's not. Really? That's what's really funny about it.
Well, how did you miss that? It's like one of the most popular Dreamcast games.
Oh yeah, the Dreamcast, that extremely popular console that sold millions and millions of units in Australia.
The extremely revered console.
Okay, but like there were like 6 games on it, and like half of them were kind of garbage.
The first console to bring online gaming to the masses of a couple hundred people.
Man,
was it though?
Ollie is just dunking on
like,
Dreamcast fans with some hot takes right now.
the Super Nintendo also had internet connections, so I mean the Dreamcast in Japan,
it had more
but even
players
still, it had more than like the entire global Dreamcast network. So you can say bringing it to the masses, but like more people played Satellaview. More people played the mobile like connectivity for Pokemon Crystal on the Game Boy Color than they did like play online in the Dreamcast. So I mean, I don't think it brought internet connection to the masses.
But 3 of us knew what Samba de Amigo was.
Yeah, so I played good games as a child instead. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, I'm sure it's fine, but it wasn't something that I'd ever heard of because I didn't have a Dreamcast. Like most and the fact people.
That the last time that series had its own game was back in like 2007, so it's been a hot minute.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
and even that one was on a Nintendo console.
Yeah, but I didn't play it. Anyway, Fashion Dreamer is also a thing that exists. They made a new style savvy game, so that's really good for me. Just wanted to put that out before we move on to the.
I love that this
the what the
guy
head-
is completely dunking on Dreamcast. He's like, oh yeah, fashion designer is my game.
Which is funny because
excuse
that
me,
popped
it's
up,
the-
and in the visuals, I was like, that looks a heck of a lot like Style Boutique, Style Savvy, whatever part of the region you happen to world you live in. It's called something slightly different. And in the chat, I'm like, Ollie, and capital letters. He's like, I know. And then I made the offhand comment. I'm like, it's probably the same developers, and it is. The guys that made that series, Nintendo obviously decided it wasn't worth them investing in it, so Marvelous and Xseed Games are doing it for them. So
and it looks great.
let's not reach that far on that.
I mean, it looks okay. It looks as good as the previous games in the Style Savvy series.
Fans of the series, fans of Style Savvy will enjoy Fashion Dreamer. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like me, because I'm going to enjoy it. Let's talk about the games that are coming out in February. We haven't done this in a really long time, and there's a bunch of really good games coming out. So out already at the time of recording, there's Metroid Prime Remastered, the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games. There's a game called Nadir. I got sent a code for this, but I had to send it back. But it's a really, really gorgeous deck building game that just looks like a hell of a lot of fun. Life is Strange 2 just got randomly kind of dropped on the eShop. There's a game from the creators of Abzu, which is that weird watery game. I don't know how to explain it. Called The Pathless. Looks really good.
Another one of these.
SpongeBob
Sorry, The Pathless is one of these PlayStation 5 exclusive launch titles that couldn't go anywhere else. The fact that it's on Switch makes me laugh.
Yeah, because they said at the time that it was just not really possible to put it on any other console.
Yeah, the PlayStation 5's unique SSD speeds make this game. Yeah. Pull the other one.
Anyway, and SpongeBob SquarePants: The Cosmic Shake also came out, and that's a decent enough game. We talked about it in the previous episode, but it's fine. And the upcoming games, there's Theater Rhythm, Final Bar Line, which is just more Theater Rhythm. There's Grim Guardians, Demon Purge, which is made by
Inti Creates,
who did the Mega Man Zero games and the
Azure Striker series.
Yeah, looks really, really good. Tales of Symphonia Remastered, Digimon World Next Order, which hopefully will be a less terrible version of that game. Just
that
for me,
implies that there are good Digimon games too.
well, I mean, they're the Digimon Story series. The Digimon World series is mostly good, but Next Order is just one of the worst games I've ever played in my life. Just for me, there's Pixel Lines 2 Into the Puzzleverse, which is a sequel to my favorite puzzle game on the Switch. There's Octopath Traveler 2 later this month, and that has a demo in it. And there's Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, which also has a demo. Alrighty. 20 questions. Angelo, you are leading on this one.
Yep, let's do it.
Is this a Dreamcast game? Because if so, I'm going to have to tap out.
It is not a Dreamcast game.
Was this game released in 2010 or after?
Yes.
Okay.
2010 or after.
Was this game released for a home console?
Yes.
Or was this game released on a disc-based console?
No. Is that 4 or 5?
That was
Four.
3.
3. Yeah.
3? God,
I mean, I don't think
None of the
we're counting
above.
Ollie's dream question. I don't think we're counting Ollie's Dreamcast question as a legitimate question, are we?
I am.
Oh. Well, that is
mean,
4.
So it's 4.
Yeah, fair.
Sorry, the disc-based question, was that a yes or a no?
It was a no.
Okay.
The Switch.
So Switch.
Switch, yeah.
Was this game published by Nintendo?
Yes.
Oh.
Was this game developed by Nintendo?
No.
Okay. That makes me think Snipper Clips, The Stretchers, Get a Job. That job one they did.
Good job.
That's the one. I knew it had job in the title. I was getting there. I can't think of any other games that would fit that criteria, though.
That was published by Nintendo.
Published by Nintendo, but not developed by Nintendo.
Okay. I mean, that feels like it should.
I mean, it could be
Easy.
Any of the Pokemon games. Could be some of the Square Enix stuff.
Bayonettas were published by Nintendo, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And Xenoblades as well?
They own the developer, though.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Which, just a side thing, the developer of the Xenoblade series is also the developer of the Baton Kaido series, which is one of the games that was announced in the Direct. So, was this game a Switch launch title?
Yes.
Okay, so it's Snipper Clips.
Yeah, it has to be Snipper Clips.
I don't think there's anything else that it could be.
Do you snip things in this game?
Yes.
I mean, I was gonna. You could
Follow-up
ask the
question.
question.
Do you also clip things in this game?
I can't answer that one.
The other question you can ask is, when playing with a significant other, do some of the comments you say out loud sound really, really inappropriate to people who have no idea what you're doing?
I mean, I guess, maybe. Sure. Like anything does, maybe?
But no, because that's like, I need you to come jump on me so I can get, that's all that sort of stuff.
I thought you meant the characters kind of go, I'm like, I didn't do that.
Is this a multiplayer game?
Yes, it is a multiplayer game.
Okay.
That's 10.
I mean, what else could it possibly be?
Either fallen into an excellently laid trap by Angelo, which I respect highly if true, or a Snipper Clips.
I think we just roll the dice on it and say Snipper Clips, and if it's a elaborate trap, then it's an elaborate trap, right?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
All right.
I can't remember who guessed. I think it was you, Luke, right? You mentioned it.
Yeah, I threw it out there. All right. Is this game? Well, hang on. It's not just called Snipper Clips. It's Snipper Clips Cut It Together.
I think it's just Snipper Clips.
Okay.
I think it's like Snipper Clips Cut It Out Together, but I think on the thing it's just called Snipper Clips.
All right, we'll just go with Snipper Clips. Is this game Snipper Clips?
Okay. So, released on March 3rd, 2017 for the Nintendo Switch, so a launch game. It features, at least on the cover, features 2 people playing the game. One character is cutting a shape out of another character, and it was developed by SFB Games, published by Nintendo. Originally developed as a Flash game, and then pitched to Nintendo. But the full title is Snipper Clips: Cut It Out Together.
The colon is the important part of this.
That's exactly
but
right.
That's why I was like, hang on, because I was like, he's probably going to be one of those pedantic, he's in that pedantic mood where he wants the full title.
I'll leave it up to you guys to decide whether or not you deserve it.
I did say the full title at one point, so I think. I don't know. I'm saying we got
on the Dreamcast question, and we had 9 questions left, so I'm going to give it to us.
Alrighty. Well, that about wraps up this week's Vookcast. Be sure to visit the site, www.vooks.net, for all your Nintendo news, reviews, and everything in between. Keep up to date for the site on Twitter at Vooks.net, which is all spelled out, or jump on over to our Discord at bit.ly/VooksDiscord. You can find all of the hosts' social information and links for all the stories covered in this episode in the episode notes on whatever platform you're listening to. Also, thank you to our patrons for donating to Patreon. It's much appreciated. I don't have your names to read out here, but they'll be on the screen in the video and in the notes in the listening platforms. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next fortnight.
fiddled with a knob. Am I now pregnant and
Pregnant?